Gary, how this all got started, Gary called me one day. He says, so what's like the big impact for you this year, for lenders this year? And normally, being the sales guy, you say like, well, sales are down a little bit, the market, affordability. But the real impacts for us this year has really been delinquency and losses is really the true story. So as much as I'm the sales guy, I thought like, hey, it's really easy for me to talk to my operations guy who has to be responsible for that and say like, what's going on back there? Like, why every week is the values up and then they're down? And then I go to a Black Book conference and they keep saying like, used car prices are going to be solid forever. And then I go back in a meeting, I'm like, why isn't that happening for us? Like, what's happening there? So I thought the best way to get more involved in this and better understand what's really happening in the remarketing side is just to sound cheesy, lean into it and have a conversation about it. It's really the goal here. So we'll see if Mark comes, but if not, we have some really interesting stuff. And this panel's on purpose. So for example, if you're familiar with the remarketing world, it always seems to be bouncing around, or really for the last 20 years, there's been this push to go from physical auctions to digital, or even chat groups, or some wholesaler friends of mine. Really, they just operate in a text group these days. So we agreed to get a big piece of this. So Matt Rispin is with me from North Toronto Auto Auction. He's been around forever, and I remember your first business card. I won't say what was on there, but I feel like it's time for that again. If you're familiar with that. And Matt runs a traditional auction where people come and you get as many people to the auction as you can. You create some excitement. And then Bryan is with EBlock, which started out as a digital auction and is actually going the other way, or at least mixing the two and buying real estate and starting to create a traditional business plan. And then, so you get a different view on what's happening. So maybe we'll kick off. You guys actually sit down, I guess. Yeah. So Matt, I think when I talk to you, what really stands out to me is what's changed for the auction world. So we keep talking about auto finance and lenders, but as an auction person, have you seen a change in what's happening in the economy with elevated delinquency and losses?
Of course. So our biggest, the thing we notice is, and I tell this story a lot, is 4 years ago, coming out of the pandemic. I know we don't want to keep talking about the pandemic, but my facility is open 24 hours. So in a week's time, and we deal with either directly or indirectly with a lot of people in this room or a lot of people's companies in this room, we might get people who are flush with money, they got government money, 20, 25 repossessions dropped off overnight in a week. True story, last night I had 27. Last night, and I'm a regional auction, 18 without keys going into the thing. So that just talk about the volumes. And I'd like to say it's because I'm getting all this new business because of my charisma or something, but in reality, it's just your guys' volumes are going up in that area and the increase is there. And so we're staffing in that area, but that's the real, like that's just volume. Probably not a lot of new customers, new lenders coming, but real stories, 25 a night as opposed to 4 years ago, 25 a week.
And Matt, has that impacted how you manage your auction? So sometimes I don't even know what it costs a lender to sell a car at the auction.
So
but
it's very cheap. There's lots of room for fees increase. No. But no, it has impacted because the repossession is, for us, and I'm sure Bryan would say the same, it's an administrative heavy type of consignment. So if you think of OEM consignment, off lease, dealer consignment, public, the repossessions coming into your facility, and there's a lot going on. So the remarketing facility, your auction is dealing with a debtor who's we're the primary contact. So they're calling in. So I've had to staff up in that area. I have a person who literally manages a warehouse of people's belongings because we keep them for 60 to 90 days, that they're in the cars when they come in, unfortunately. So we have to manage their personals in case they want to either pick them up or then we discard them. So so then you get to an inspection. Or like I said, 17 or whatever the number was, I said 19 last night, dropped off with no keys. So then we're waiting on keys, can't move them in my yard. Hopefully the tow company listened to my overnight security and and drop them off in the right spot. Then they're going to be sitting. I can't move them. And I just was showing pictures to Bryan of the snow I have right now in my facility. And then it's, so you have people managing that. So you're managing all these different areas. You're doing inspections, then you're cleaning it, or we get to the final remarketing. And then, oh yeah, we auction the vehicles, which we'll probably get to in a bit. So it's a big process. We've had to staff up a lot to service our clients. Like I said, I have 1.5 people inside just dealing with debtors, trying to get their what they owe, their personals back, that sort of stuff, and then a person managing that whole thing. And that's just a small fragment of that.
It's really interesting, and that leads to another thing about staffing up. So one of the real impacts or challenges this year, at least earlier in the year, with a lender trying to get cars processed once they're repossessed, was the consolidation of the auctions. So obviously we had an auction by another auction leave the country, a floor plan company shut down, all that, which seemed to bottleneck losses. Bryan, with a company that seems to be staffing up for these kind of things, what's your view on consolidation and how it'll impact recovery values maybe in 2025?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of strange things happening in the market right now. I mean, I think I'm just taking a wild guess here, but you've got two auction guys up on a platform, and I think that means delinquency is probably pretty high with a lot of the lenders in this room. You know, a unique piece of what we're seeing with consolidation is, you know, regionality used to be a really big part of the remarketing business. So you might have a bunch of cars that were, you know, defleeted or came off lease or repossessed up in, you know, say the Ottawa market. And, you know, you'd hire a couple of car carriers to bring those down into the GTA to arbitrage. You know, you might get better values in Toronto, or you might take some Halifax units, move them into Quebec. We're seeing much less of that now with, you know, the transition to a lot of auction platforms moving digitally, even wholesalers doing a lot more dealer-to-dealer business. It's easier than ever to move units, you know, regionally and across provinces. So we see buyers and sellers coming from all over, transacting on units from all over. And of course, you know, you do have transport and additional depreciation there. You know, the other thing that I'd say is really unique in the market right now, and Brendan, you touched on it with bailiffs. You know, I've really just started seeing this, honestly, in the last 60 days or so. But we will get a bailiff that arrives at one of our facilities, and, you know, when we're checking in the vehicle and finding out, you know, who it's being brought there on behalf of, sometimes the bailiff tells us that they don't know. They say, I have a repo warrant from 3 different lenders on this car. You pick. You tell me which lien holder we should check this in under. And we're seeing that because there are vehicles that are, you know, sometimes financed fraudulently with multiple liens, or you have units right now with repair liens on them. So often it's the bailiffs that are doing the same work for every lien holder. It's definitely a unique time.
I always forget at the RSLAs, but that's a booming business, so to speak, right? So, great. And so in the old days, you used to really want your auction team to know which auction to go to get the best value. So, for example, you might send trucks directly to the U.S. or a platform that has access to the U.S. Maybe send cars to Quebec because they're more popular there. Is that something that the auction can facilitate now, or do we still want our wholesale teams trying to find the best place to send a car? And Mark, maybe that's a good way to jump in there.
Hi, Mark. Hi, I apologize for being a little bit late. Got myself lost here. I mean, the reality is now is it's almost multi-channel, right? Like we're very seldom do we see at least, I say fully half our inventory is listed on another electronic auction, or and sometimes on a parallel auction. So that it seems to me that the days of where you went just to one channel and then stopped and gave up, or just decided that was your channel, that's sort of going away. So you sort of see the channels competing against each other a little bit more effectively, and I think that tightens up the bid-ask spreads as well. And at the end of the day, should get better pricing for the cars. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, for sure. I guess what I'm really trying to figure out is, like, you have physical auctions, you have digital physical, and then you have full digital. Is there one platform that's, and Bryan, for example, you have both. So is there, and I've heard of some auctions shutting down the physical to only going digital. Is there a best solution in there, or is it just try a little bit of everything? Like you mentioned, Mark, you've seen people sell their car on every platform to see which one they can get the most value for. So is there a way to simplify it from a lender versus having to be an expert at all of them?
To be honest with you, I mean, we take all of our feedback from the buyers and sellers. If, we're not going to build a facility unless we have, a large buyer base saying, hey, we need to be in lanes bidding on a car. It just won't happen. What we do find is it's usually the type of inventory that's being offered in an auction environment that kind of drives whether people need to kick tires, smell the interior, do the paint gauge reading, all those types of things. Matt with his auction at North Toronto, always been known as a specialty kind of location for some recreational product. Like, you got snowmobiles there, you've got fire trucks from municipal contracts, things like that. Would they do well on a digital auction platform? Possibly, but you're talking some very, very unique pieces. When you're talking about vehicles with, 4 wheels and a VIN number, it's very easy to get the data that you need to make an informed buying decision digitally. If you've got a good condition report, you've got, good buying traction on the platform, it's easy to make, a pretty good decision on whether that car is a good buy. When you've got some unique pieces, like heavy fleet equipment, construction equipment, that type of thing. That's where I think to this day really still need an in-person presence to see that type of inventory. So for us, we're about, meeting the customer where the customer is. We're not building a box for the customer to live in. If you're telling us that you need people on site to bid on units, then, we'll make that happen.
So we took the other, pre-COVID, you're looking at 5%. The low-hanging fruit was going digital. So that was the low-hanging fruit being that which was easy to inspect. I completely agree with what you're saying. What we're seeing is an increased demand for inspection services, for certification services. We have a fleet of, I think it's close to 30 people that literally run around inspecting cars on site. So we have a distributed approach where the people go to the cars, but the same thing is achieved obviously by bringing the cars to a central area. So we're seeing definitely as more cars go digital, there is an increased demand for certification, for inspection, and arbitration becomes just a bigger and bigger part of it, because the shortcoming of a digital auction is the ability to inspect. There's no question about that, and you have to work around that.
For this room, the repo's changed, right? 10 years ago, a repo might be 4 or 5 years old because that's what you guys were lending at or whatever. But now we're seeing stuff come back that's 10 to 12 years old. So when you're going to sell it again, it's a different client, whether you're at a wholesale auction and you may be selling it to someone who has to retail it again, or you're trying to find end user people that might, because now you would never see in 2010 a repo coming back that was a 2013 with 240K. That didn't happen. But those are the lives we live right now. That's what we're getting in, and then you're trying to make value of it, that sort of thing. So there is that sort of niche too, as sort of your average selling price. Like my average selling price, I'm not sure the other guys up here might be lower or higher than some of the other auctions.
I think that's a good segue for this. So as a lender, really what I want to know the best from my auction partners is how do I get the most value out of the car when it does come to your lot? And if I go back into history, just a fun little story, but hot dog day used to get me more money for the cars. If you remember, Brian, you'd have a barbecue and we'd average $500 more a car. Or if you go upscale, VW was famous for remarketing their cars or reconditioning the cars before they sold them so that the dealer could retail it right away. What's happening in today's landscape, and how can I get more money for our cars?
So for the vehicle, like a segue in. So again, the vehicle's coming back. The challenge for remarketers on your guys' end is, you're right. You used to be able to throw a windshield in it. Some of them were very good. They really spend a lot of money on the remarketing side. But the challenge for you guys is these cars are coming back in crazy amount. Like the conditions that these are coming back in, whether that be age or the society that's taking care of these cars. Like I've seen this year. So this is in a year's time. We've had to biohazard cars. We've seen drugs. We've had cars come with sawed-off machine guns. We've had cars with a goat.
Tell us more.
I'm not
a goat.
I'm not kidding. So, and I run a pretty tight ship, but I don't have anything. When a car gets dropped in your yard with a goat in it, what do you do with that car? So replace the windshield.
That's got to sell for more.
Well,
it's got to have a better value.
I do what anyone did. I got another goat. So no, I mean, so
It's only my first year in this business, but I've not had a goat yet.
so anyways, no, the bailiff went back, dropped the goat back off where he got it, brought the car back, and then we had a car that a goat had lived in, which is so those values. So the
I didn't see that coming.
I've actually seen worse than a goat, but it's actually, I won't even get into it right now. So, but that's sort of the things that you're dealing with when you're trying to get the values of the cars, and that's something that where you talk about black book or stuff like that. There's no formula. There's no formula for what you have to deal with, and there's no remarketing that any of us can do to make that car better, except to provide a auction experience where you got a lot of bids and people are going to give you that amount.
I would say too, just to build on that. I mean, if you think about, what a lot of you are paying an auction provider, your providers are paying an auction provider to do. We do a lot of things, ancillary services, storing personals, handling redemptions, all those things. But at the core of our business, we're just here to put eyes on cars. That's how we drive value. We bring buyers to your units. Ideally, more buyers, more bidders means more gross proceeds. That's just how an auction works at its core. In terms of like how you maximize proceeds as a lender, don't ever advance anything more than 80% of LTV, and don't ever
Easy
set
to
a
say
residual over 40%. You'll never sell any cars, but you won't lose a penny.
Easy to say in the mirror, looking in the
No,
mirror.
honestly though, I'm just going to say, it really is. When you get to the point of remarketing, your car's running at an auction facility and you've got to wholesale it, your best way to maximize proceeds is simply to convert that unit and brand yourself. So whoever you're selling cars with, whether you're selling them under your own brand or selling them through a partner, make sure that partner's got a very good following and got some good marketing behind it. Like it's the sellers at auction who are selling cars. They're running 10 in the lane and they're selling 8, or ideally they're selling all 10. That's where the buyers want to be. The buyers don't want to be dealing with if bids. Neither of the three of us, I don't think, want to deal with if bids. It burns a lot of resource internally and externally. The sellers who price the cars right, convert, sell the units, tend to have a better following and tend to maximize the proceeds down the road.
That sounds like we're pricing the car too low. Mark, any thoughts?
I mean, I'm back to the multi-channel ability of some of the lenders. You don't have to pick a channel. You can use multiple people, try multiple people. There's the 2 auctioneers up here, the 3 of us rather, and then there's 4 or 5 others. So I would encourage you to start relationships with more people. That's just kind of business 101. But that probably was too much work historically, and now because you can do this and you can repurpose the digitization or the digital footprint of that car and put it on another auction very, very easily, or have multiple auctioneers working on that. That'd be the first thing. The second thing I would say is that I know when there is a discount certainly to a car that is perceived to be a repo car, and I know in our case, as a matter of course, we don't disclose the seller in advance of the sale. After the sale, the person can request and the way we kind of compensate for that is we do more inspections and we certify and we arbitrate. So to me, the multiple channels just gives you more people to take a look at that car. I think the frustration right now probably is there is a fairly large gap between expectation for the price of a car these days and what's actually transacting. I keep seeing this stable car prices going up, prices data points. I don't believe them for a second. That's not what we're seeing. We're not seeing really any price recovery in cars, frankly. I mean, there's still a bit of a 2021 hangover. The cars are transacting. In fact, I mean, this January is up about 40% from last January. So the volumes are up. That's good for us. I wouldn't say that we've seen any sort of price increases.
One of the challenges that as a whole the finance industry is going through is you touched on it, is the cars that are starting to come back now. They were sold at a price that's probably not achievable to come back, right? So if you're, it's a case of we're delivering bad news. I see some of that. There's, I have travel trailers and the paper's on it's 50 grand, and I've had it in 3 auctions and I can get 18, and we do a pretty good job with those, right? And that's bad news, and no one wants to call with that news. And I understand that you guys are sitting there saying, how am I going to do this? That's just one. So I'm sure there's a lot out there. So that's sort of the reckoning we're dealing with right now. That's why we have a lot of if bids right now, is because the gap is today's price is just not achievable. It's not achievable in regular times, but really right now, those vehicles, toys, whatever it is coming back, and I see some of the paper and just it's not even close to achievable. We have bad
We're
news.
right in the middle of that crux 2021 lease return. That is a big arbitrage right now.
It's important to know too. I mean, if you originated a deal anytime in the last 3 years, you know that deal got booked on an already insane valuation based on market dynamics at the time. You know, and if you think about it, you know, most lenders are going to advance significantly more than the value of the car. So you're already advancing, you know, a pretty high LTV on an already inflated price. I said this at Used Car Week, but I'll use the analogy again. Like, used cars aren't fine wines. Like, they go down in value. They are 6 packs of beer in a hot car. Like, it loses value really quickly. You want to get that open really quick. But that's just a reality we live in, right? I think, you know, during the pandemic, it didn't matter if you were at a lender or a leasing company. You were, you know, probably seen as a superstar. Collections was seeing very low delinquency. Dealers were probably bailing customers out because there was equity in the car. Lease returns turned into, you know, profit centers. They weren't losing residual value. Things have normalized, though. You know, I remember it at my last role, you know, and I'm sure a lot of lenders in this room are the same. A lot of the time you repossessed a car during COVID, and you were cutting that debtor back a check. You were selling the car for more than they owed you. Like, those days are gone, but I think that's still stuck with some of us mentally, is that, you know, what we're seeing now is just how things have been, I think, pre-pandemic.
Go ahead, Mark.
We're also seeing, and this is a little bit of an inference on my part, but when I saw the liquidity sort of in the fall drying up a little bit, it looked to me like some of our dealer customers, quite a number of our dealer customers, look to be, in my view, offside on their floor planning, because you had this depreciation of value. So these dealers are kind of locked into these cars, and the cars sat there for a good long time, sometimes months. Now we're starting to see, you know, you can only play that game for so long, but I think that's in the first quarter of this year starting to get caught up. But that definitely affected perceived values of cars because they were staying marked up on dealer lots with a hope and a prayer. I've been told this was much worse in the U.S. and the Eastern Seaboard from some of our U.S. partners, but that seems to be going away now a little bit and pushing the liquidity. I don't have direct experience with this, but you could just see from behavior that's probably what was happening.
It's a good point. So I can tell you direct feedback from our sales team is that our advances are too low, and we're back into this kind of ring. Is like, well, this car's worth more because a little old lady drove that whole thing, but it's definitely a thing. So but here's a question: as far as lenders go, and I've heard a lot about relationships I've been pulling out of your conversations, is how are we doing as lenders? Are we nice to you? Should we ask for more? Should we ask for less? Yeah. Should we work together and hold our cars back until the values go up? How are we doing as relationship partners?
You want me to start? Fine. No, I'm good. No, it's a challenge, but I mean, it's challenging for us because, like Bryan said, nobody loves a phone call. Like auctions are sexy when they're sold on the block, right? That's what creates following, and we do get it. Like, we understand that that's other people might need to make decisions and that sort of thing. Like, it is hard when the auction price is such a gap away from where you guys might need to be or where you need to be. And like, the dealers are going through it too, right? You got 10 in a row. The dealers sell the first car. You talk them into taking a $5,000 loss on a truck, and he's like, Matt, I can't sell anymore. He's like, this is enough for this week. And so we get that. I think for my facility, turning the inventory over quickly is a key for us, right? And being on top of secondary liens, which has become a huge problem, those sort of things. You know, with the commitment to sell, and it sounds silly, but we need that commitment to sell. We need that commitment to sell for you guys to drive your prices up, because people follow certain lenders. They really do. And some lenders are known not to get back to them on time on if bids. Some lenders are known not to be great sellers, so they just don't bother bidding. And I will tell you this, is as much as you guys want to hold on because you don't want to accept that loss, it doesn't usually get better. Okay. There's a saying in our business that the first money is your best money. And someone says, oh, I remember one time, the third time I ran it, I got the best money. Yes, it does happen. But a lot of the time that money is your best money at that facility because the people are seeing it. And I don't want to offend dealers in here, but dealers can be a little bit like sheep sometimes. So they see something that's been there for 5-6 times, even though there's nothing wrong with it, they don't want to bid on it because no one else has. And so what happens is if you're starting to run that vehicle over at the auction over and over and over again, it loses eyes. People, it's like a salesman at a car dealership walking by that, the pink Oldsmobile. It might be a great car, but it's just no one ever sells it. So, those are sort of the things that I would say for lenders. It's just, we understand, but you can help yourselves. You can help us help you by doing some of that stuff.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, we sell, I think last month, roughly 50% of our listings sold on the first day. And of those who get relisted, which is the vast majority of them, less than 10% of those relistings ever go for an increased price. So the pricing is getting, like, our guys are pretty good at pricing. I got to tell you, when I showed up and asked them about this, how they were doing it, I'm still to this day impressed by how tightly we can estimate what a car is worth and what it will or will not sell for. So that would be the first thing. The second thing on the lending side, I found in our company, when I got there, our communication with the lenders wasn't bad. There wasn't a whole bunch of negative things I had to deal with. It was just kind of non-existent. There wasn't much communication. So we started with the people we dealt with regularly having bi-weekly meetings for 20 minutes. It increased our visibility for what was needed to help customer service. It's one of these things. For some reason, I can only speak from my experience in this industry, we weren't speaking to the lenders much, which is odd because we've got to clear liens on basically every car. There's interaction and paperwork flowing back and forth all the time. It just stands to reason there should be some communication on an ongoing and perhaps proactive basis. Because I did find there were a few little things that we did that didn't cost us any money, cost us very little time, and made a lot of people on the other side of those transactions very happy. So it was just low-hanging fruit. And we'll continue to find that.
I like that. What some examples of the bi-weekly meetings are a great idea, and I think just most of us have gotten stuck in Teams meetings, maybe not at the auction, but the rest of us. So it is important to make communication a specific goal. But any tips on a couple of little things that made a difference for your lenders' communication?
It was just what they needed when they needed it. That was the first one. And then the second was the lenders are pretty attuned to the know your client. Lenders are very good at KYC. I came from the investment banking industry. KYC was your Bible. And here we're pretty good at it, but the lenders are better. And so we learned a few things about how we could get some know your client information. We started to get some input data on some of the transactions that might not have been above board, and we were able to look at them more efficiently and quickly and differently along with our bank to ascertain whether this was a problem or not. And at the same time, we were able to give them more information that they didn't have as a lender to ascertain whether that was an above board transaction or not. So it was a bit of fraud prevention. We didn't actually discover any fraud to speak of, but it was, does this working? Why is this client doing this? Why did he do this before? Where's this VIN? And it was just simple things where we had bits of information that they didn't and vice versa. And it was an information exchange.
Thank you. So here's a question. Bryan, I'll start with Bryan, but what do you see happening in 2025? Anything new coming on the remarketing front? Something that maybe you know about? The rest of us, apparently you knew a lot about wine and beer. So what's the next, what's in the corner store for?
Sounds like goats and cars is going to be pretty popular this year.
Petting farms.
No, honestly, I think it's going to be an interesting year in terms of retained value. We all know what's happening south and in our own country in terms of tariffs and export. We have a lot of units in today's market that do enter the U.S. market. It takes a lot of the pressure off Canadian inventory, helps to support our prices. If that faucet gets turned off, you're significantly compounding a problem that we're already seeing exists today with, I wouldn't say accelerated depreciation, regular depreciation just on cars that were booked with inflated prices. So interested to see, even from my own opinion, to see where the pricing game shakes out. And yeah.
Matt?
Yeah, I would echo that. So, I mean, to start quickly is obviously the uncertainty. I'd say it's the uncertainty that scared most our big buyers. My 4 of my top 6 buyers in 2024 were were either U.S. buyers or guys with business plans that do shipping. So that was a concern. It didn't kick in, but there was a scramble a little bit for sure. Uncertainty is definitely something that drives the market. As far as the repo side, I mean, we're going to look to keep helping the group streamline their processes, because I think that's where we can all save money, both sides, the auction and your teams, because with volatile prices, I mean, we have to watch our expenses.
I mean, in the first draft of the tariff, first swing, we weren't really affected, just given the VIN numbers that were targeted. It really wasn't going to hurt us all that much. But as I said, I came from finance, so to me, the question of the year is, how is whatever the tariff ends up becoming, whatever it ends up looking at, and I'm sure there's going to be multiple iterations of that, does that enhance used car values, or does it hurt used car values? And does it enhance liquidity or hurt liquidity? And I got to tell you, you could write 50 pages on each side of that ledger right now. I can think of reasons that used cars become a heck of a lot more valuable if new cars become more expensive. You could spend 2 hours on that. And on the flip side, clearly it's going to have an economic effect. And which one of those is going to be greater? So to me, I'm going to spend a good amount of time every week trying to crack that nut and figure out how that affects our customers, and figure out how we can obviate the issues around that. But that's going to be the issue number one for us this year.
That's great. So here's my summary. So don't freak out when I see lower values, because it is what the market is. Could get better maybe with tariffs, and be aware of all the work that goes into processing a repo for the little fee that we pay. So that's what but no, seriously, I think it's a really important piece of the industry, and one that we don't always look at that much. So thank you for working with us as partners, and hopefully we have a better 2025 with recovery values.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time.